And we are back. I'm Chris Drew from Innocent Sports with my guy Ron from Best Media, giving you more Buckeye content. Obviously, we know Ohio State had a huge win over Notre Dame in what was the most dramatic game of the season, without a doubt, game of the year and an instant classic. Took a couple of years off of both of our lives, but we're here again to provide more Ohio State content. What's going on, Ron?
Not much. Glad to be here. Big shout out to Bleacher Report for continuing to bring us back. Glad to be here and can't wait to talk some Buckeye football.
Yep, it's all about them Buckeyes. Obviously, this week's interesting for them because it is a bye week, so they get to sit back and watch, the rest of college football battle it out. You got everybody on upset alert because we're entering the part of the season that really is contenders versus pretenders. So they got their big, first Goliath of the three Goliaths out of the way. Now they get a bye week, got a chance to get healthy, and then they get Maryland next week. But what I want to talk about today for you and for the chat, what we're going to break down is who is really the best team in the Big Ten. Is it Ohio State? Is it Penn State? Or is it, back-to-back Big Ten champion Michigan? And what have we learned so far this season?
Whoa. You only named 3 teams. Don't forget about the Fighting Terps.
Oh, yeah.
We just launched our poll, and Maryland is also included. So who is the best team in the Big Ten? We just dropped that poll in the chat. So let us know who you voted for.
Yeah, absolutely. Let us vote and then comment who you voted for so we can get a real good look at it. First of all, Ron, obviously this whole Big Ten conversation has been one that always happens at the beginning of every year. In large part, it is primarily Michigan or Ohio State, but the recent resurgence of Penn State and obviously Sean Clifford after his 78th year of eligibility is now no longer on the team. They have a good prolific passer. Drew Aller enters the conversation. Mike Yurcich and James Franklin have a good program, and it led to Mr. Lou Holtz, who has made it a job to trade jabs with Ryan Day over the last week. Had some things to say after Ryan Day snapped on bro after the game, talking about where's Lou Holtz at.
Quite possibly the strangest beef in the history of sports media. Lou Holtz is 80-something years old, beefing with Ryan Day, head coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes. And the fact that the spat is still going Thursday, the week after the game, is honestly insane to me. But Lou Holtz did recently respond to Ryan Day's comments after the game where he said, "Where is Lou Holtz?" And Lou Holtz had to say, "I don't feel bad about saying it because I believed it. Notre Dame was the better football team." He doesn't want to talk about Michigan 0-2. He doesn't want to talk about the big game coming up against Penn State and Michigan again. He's a great coach. He's done a tremendous job. He's a great offensive mind. Ohio State's a good football team. I don't think they're a great football team. He could go after me all he wants. So I just want to get your thoughts on his comments that Ohio State is a good football team, not a great football team. Because if Ohio State's not a great football team after beating one of the best Notre Dame teams that we've seen in 30-something years since Lou Holtz was the coach, how are they not a good team? And who are the great teams in college football?
Yeah, it's definitely odd because it's almost like you're dissing your team while you try to diss Ryan Day. Like you could have said this is a great Ohio State team and that was a great hard-fought win, but I still think Notre Dame is tougher. Okay, we would have stand by that. But you want to, first of all, Lou Holtz, I thought was a little goofy, and I don't know what I expect from an 86-year-old man beefing with someone in their 40s. But to say basically you don't want to talk about Penn State and you don't want to talk about Michigan after they beat Notre Dame feels a little silly to me. Because after the game, when you ask Ryan Day about a win over Notre Dame, he would look silly if he started talking about Penn State and Michigan. No, that's not what it's about. We just had a last-second walk-off win over Notre Dame in what was a phenomenal game. Honestly, the last thing I'm thinking about in that moment is Penn State and Michigan. Additionally, why do people act like 2019 didn't exist? Like, I know maybe it was a slip-up by Lou Holtz, but Ryan Day is 1-2 against Michigan, no matter how you slice it. Like, you can say what you want. Obviously, for him being the Ohio State coach, he does need to do a better job beating Michigan, but he also beat them like he's 1-2. And then, so you want to bring up that record, and then you ignore Ryan Day's record against Penn State.
And the craziest part to ignore that is it took a worldwide pandemic to save Jim Harbaugh's job at Michigan. If Ohio State and Michigan would have played in 2020, that was the year of the famous quote, "We're going to hang 100 on them." Yeah. And I feel confident in saying Justin Fields, Garrett Wilson, and Chris Olave might have hung 100 on that Michigan team if they played that game this year. So for this idea that Ohio State has just been this downtrodden program that hasn't been able to meet Michigan, and Michigan's just this Goliath that's been unbeatable, is a fallacy. Because if Ryan Day would have played in 2020, they'd be 2-2, and I'd go to the grave believing that.
Lou Holtz was born in 1937. He's seen a lot of things in his lifetime. The one thing he has never seen is Notre Dame beat Ohio State. So if I was Lou Holtz, I would also not like Ryan Day and Ohio State. But there is a little side note in this. You know what's funny? There were two little homies when Ryan Day was the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. It was Keenan Bailey, and then the other one was Lou Holtz's grandson. Lou Holtz's grandson would love and wants to work for Ryan Day at some point. So the fact that his granddad is beefing with Ryan Day cannot sit well. He's going to be like, Grandpa, please stop beefing with him, because the hope is for me to get back to Ohio State at some point and coach under Ryan Day. He was what they called his little right-hand man when he was the coordinator.
And for those that aren't familiar with the name, Keenan Bailey, former assistant under Brian Hartline in the wide receiver room, recently promoted to tight ends coach and full-time assistant at The Ohio State University this past year. So big shout out to Coach Key.
Yep. And shout out to Trey Holtz. I hope he does end up coming back to Ohio State and being an offensive mind, because he deserves that. And that would be the ultimate big homie move from Ryan Day. You know what? I'm beefing with your grandfather, but I'm going to give you a job back here at The Ohio State University. Lou Holtz, though, he wanted to talk about Penn State. He wanted to talk about Michigan. So let's talk about it. Let's go through the positions and figure out who is the best in your eyes, who's the best in my eyes, if we're looking at kind of what I'm calling the Big Ten's Big Three. Sorry, I am leaving Maryland out of this discussion, Ron.
No, the Big Ten has the real Big Three, as I like to say. You know, the teams down in Florida might have something to say about that. Miami, UF, and Florida State. But the real Big Three is the Big Three in the Big Ten: Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State. And I feel like when you're discussing who's the best in the Big Ten, it's best to look through the lens of who's the best out of the Big Three, because ultimately that's most likely to produce the Big Ten champion. So we're going to take a look at who's the best in the Big Ten through the lens of the Big Three.
Now, this is a little bit difficult to do at this point, especially because we're dealing with three teams who have three completely different roads to start the year. Michigan, even the Michigan fans would tell you they've played an extremely soft schedule. They haven't really been tested. No one's been a challenge. Some people think they're sleepwalking through their schedule. That's fine. Penn State has played decent competition and defenses that are good. Let's face it, the Iowa defense, no matter how you feel about their offense, their defense is good. And by just about every metric is between top 10 and top 5 in the country. Ohio State has kind of the cupcakes they've played, but they also have the single biggest test out of all three schools. So we're judging these three, kind of their offense, defense, based off of three completely different roads. And I want to look at position group wise. I want to start on offense. Where would you rank the offensive line, or how would you rank the offensive lines in the Big Three?
And this one might seem a little crazy, but I have Michigan at 1, Ohio State at 2, and Penn State at 3. And I know that Olu is the highest graded tackle right now in out of the Big Three. I know that Michigan's offensive line has had struggles, but it's just hard to bet against back-to-back Joe Moore winning line.
Facts.
I think that these guys are going to be able to get it together. They have a couple transfers on the offensive line, and we see the struggles that Ohio State is dealing with as far as getting new offensive linemen acclimated. I think Zach Zittner is still one of the best offensive linemen in all of college football. He's still out there just mauling people. So I feel like as Michigan continues to progress, they're going to get things fixed on the offensive line, and I still think that is the most elite offensive line in the Big Ten right now.
Yeah, I'd agree with you at this point. I think overall they're definitely the best run blocking offensive line, and with the new clock rules, they're definitely able to control some time. Fasciano from Penn State is really interesting, bro, because I think he's probably the best pass setter in the Big Ten, kind of by a wide margin. But he does frustrate me at times because in the run game, he's either really good or really bad. So it's definitely odd to kind of watch him go through things. But no, I tend to agree with you. I have Michigan 1, Ohio State 2, Penn State 3. Ohio State does have their ups and downs, but I do feel like they did a really good job blocking a good front in Notre Dame, especially down the stretch, especially when Kyle needed time. But right now, Penn State not being able to run the ball in large parts of their offensive line.
Absolutely.
Do you want to jump ahead, talk a little bit about tight ends? Don't want to spend a ton of time on it, but tight ends are definitely at least worth a mention. In the offense, a lot of times tight ends are kind of we're not going to appear in the stats, but we're going to do such a good job that you're going to feel us. So when you watch games, that is kind of the tight end position. Out of curiosity, before we even get into ranking them, how do you feel about the Ohio State tight ends so far? Do you think they are playing at a championship level?
I do. I think we've seen Cade improve in both ways that he's been criticized. I feel like Cade Stover has been one of the most criticized players on the Ohio State team. Cade had his deficiencies last year in the receiving game, and then this year we saw him have a little bit of struggles in the blocking game. But this past week against Notre Dame, we saw him have a chip block that's been going all over the timeline of him practically throwing a defensive end into our guard and almost blowing out his knee. He knocked him off his feet so hard. We've seen Cade be a consistent contributor in the receiving game every week this year. So overall, I think Cade has leveled up in a way that the Buckeyes absolutely needed from him, because we always used to say, what are we doing scheming things up for Cade Stover? I don't think he's that type of guy. Ryan Day used to say that he wanted to get the receptions record for Jeremy Rucker. We didn't see him get it that year. And then the next year, he's throwing it to Cade like Cade's Jeremy Rucker. So I think Cade has done everything that's been asked of him, and he's continuing to take the criticism and develop each week. So I think that in the addition to G. Scott really asserting himself as a great blocker. Everyone thought of G. Scott as a receiving tight end, former top 100 wide receiver, was just too big at wide receiver and couldn't make weight, and decided to have the conversation with Ryan Day about moving to tight end, and he has made that transition. And last year, our former tight ends coach said that G. Scott has the best blocking technique on the team, and we hear that and we're like, oh, well, that just must mean, he's giving good effort, but he's not strong enough to do it. And then we've seen G get in the game this year, and I think he's arguably the best blocking tight end on the team now, in addition to his skills as a receiver. So I think the Ohio State tight ends are playing at a championship caliber level.
Yeah, definitely agree with you. If you look at the big three, Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State, Cade Stover leads all three of those teams in receptions and yards and averaging over 14 yards per catch. So a really impressive start to the season for him, and is playing at a high clip. If I'm looking at kind of all the tight ends, though, in the conference in the big three, Colston Loveland from Michigan, I think, has been really, really good to start the season. He doesn't have the catches or the yards that Cade Stover has, but definitely off to a good start. Has been a more reliable target because he does have really, really good hands. And a lot of people feel like he is the best pro prospect tight end wise in the entire Big Ten. So I don't know how I would rank them kind of to start the year. I do want to ask you, how would you rank the big three, at least in the tight end room, if we're just looking at tight ends?
It's crazy to say, but I have, again, Ohio State at 1. I have Michigan at 2, because I agree with you. I think Colston Loveland is the second best tight end out of the big three. And then Penn State at 3, which is crazy to say after coming off a week where Drew Aller threw 3 touchdowns to his tight ends last week. So they seem to be weapons that Drew Aller is looking for in the red zone. None of them really had any deep passes, not like they're streaking down the seams, but when they get in the red zone, that is who Drew Aller is looking for. And last week we saw it. 4 touchdowns by Drew Aller, 3 of them to tight ends.
Yeah, I will say Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren have been really good for Penn State to start the year. If I'm going to rank tight ends, I probably go Michigan 1, just because I think they have the single best tight end. And then I'll go Penn State 2, Ohio State 3. So I have Ohio State at the bottom there, but in large part it has to do with I trust the 2 Penn State tight ends, even though I think Cade Stover is better than both of them. But collection-wise, I think he's not that much better to kind of split the difference. But I do think it's close. Want to jump ahead, talk wide receivers. Obviously, we've talked plenty about zone 6. This one feels like the easiest. Like, I feel like I'm Dwayne Wade, you're LeBron James. I'm going to throw this up. How would you rank receivers, like receiver units, in the Big 10 out of the Big 3?
I mean, obviously, they don't call Ohio State wide receiver U for nothing. And while we haven't seen the year that we expected out of Marv and Emeka so far, and then again, it's crazy to think, and this is exactly why Ohio State is number one, because we said Marv and Emeka, and the third wide receiver that didn't even get mentioned there is Julian Fleming, number one wide receiver in the 2020 recruiting class. This team has an embarrassment of riches at wide receivers: Carnell Tate, Brandon Innes, and the list of people goes on. And then Xavier Johnson, a former walk-on, now scholarship, Block O recipient, and he just turned into Mr. Big Play, because every time Ohio State needs a big play, he's there to make it for them. I think Ohio State has one of the deepest wide receiver rooms in the country, and it might just be one of the deepest position rooms in the entire country. So obviously, Ohio State at number one. And this one is going to be surprising to you probably, because we say that Michigan runs the run rate, but Roman Wilson has been the most impressive wide receiver that I've seen out of watching the two between Michigan and Penn State. I know my Penn State fans are going to be mad at me and be like, put some respect on Keandre Lambert's son. I mean, he's been out there balling. He seems like he's been very difficult to cover, but Roman Wilson, every time I watch Michigan, and I tend to watch Michigan games with Michigan fans, and when I'm watching the game with them, every time I see them start to panic and it looks like they're worried and this offense is about to stall out and either have a 3 and out or not be able to finish the drive, Roman Wilson goes streaking across the middle and it's like, there's that man. Like, he's just constantly open. So I have to give the nod to Michigan there, because I just think Roman Wilson is having an explosive year, and hats off to him for the development and the step that he's taken since last year.
No, Roman's done a really good job, and I've been really surprised by him this season. I mean, I did see, like, early in the year, Michigan fans clamoring for the Blitnikoff. They're not going to throw the ball enough for him to get that, but he has really been fun to watch. But again, to me, this is this is not even a debate. I mean, I would go Ohio State 1 in large part because I think Xavier Johnson would be the number 2 receiver on both teams. I think Xavier would be the number 2 on Michigan and Penn State. And he really doesn't get on the field too much for Ohio State. I think the unit obviously is full of NFL guys. Marv is kind of the consensus top receiver in the country. When he's doing Marv things, I think he's the best player in all college football. So that one's easy. But I will go Michigan after and then Penn State third. I do think they are pretty comparable, though. I think Keandre Lambert-Smith and Roman Wilson are comparable receivers. And they're right around the same yard mark, too. Roman Wilson has 268 and Keandre Lambert-Smith has 286. So close. They're close in terms of, talent, in terms of stats as well. I do think the thing that could end up pushing the Penn State receivers a little bit over the top is the fact that I do think the Penn State offense is more pass friendly. I do think, Mike Yursich is doing a really good job kind of making sure that ball is spread around. So moving forward, I would expect the Penn State receivers to start to get more and more pub, because as we hit kind of the part of the season where it's time to put the anchors in the weights in your pockets and play your best version of football, I do firmly believe that Michigan will resort back to the run rate and that Penn State will continue to open things up. So I think late in the year, you could see a guy like Keandre Lambert-Smith be kind of the third or fourth best receiver in the Big Ten.
Whoa. You're bearing the lead about why Penn State could elevate the receiver play. We're talking pedigree in that room right now.
We are.
You have the little brother of the Cliff Goat, Liam Clifford, asserting himself as the slot receiver at Penn State and has been coming up with big play after big play for them.
Which is wild.
Which is wild, because again, I have a lot of friends that are Penn State fans and they're like, don't sleep on Liam Clifford. And I'm like, you have to be kidding me. Like, number one, Sean Clifford was at Penn State from the time I was in 8th grade until my 15th year high school reunion. It feels like he's been there forever. And it's like, okay, finally Sean Clifford graduates. And now here we go. Liam Clifford, wide receiver 3 at Penn State. It seems like the Clifford legacy never ends for the Nittany Lions.
Yep. Never ends. The Cliffords will be there forever. It's funny. I thought that's how the Tagovailoas would be at Bama when they had Tulia and Tua there at the same time. But then obviously Tulia ended up skedaddling.
I know this is an Ohio State stream, but I have to ask you, is Bama kicking themselves right now for not having Talia as their starting quarterback?
Absolutely. Rumor has it they try to tamper with him to get him come back over the offseason.
Sure, you don't want to come back.
Yeah, you sure you don't want to come back. All right, want to talk about defense. It's interesting because I saw it in the chat. When is the last time Ryan Day had a really elite defense? 2019. In that 2019 year, a lot of people thought that they were the best team in all college football and going to win a title. Obviously, Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence had something to say about that. But here we are. Oh, wait, I skipped a big position. I skipped running backs. I don't know what's wrong with me. Got to talk running backs offensively. Blundered that one. Talk about running backs. This is a good one too. Who has the best running backs in the Big 10?
And I'm glad you said that. The best running backs. And I feel like I'm going to get crap for this because Michigan fans think they have the best running backs in the country. And I'm here to tell you, you think they do?
No, I say they do think that.
Oh, I was going to say, I disagree. I was like, don't cut me off.
Yeah, Ron was about to grab me through the screen.
Don't you dare. So something, a soapbox that I've been standing on since the offseason is that Ohio State has the best running back room in the country. I've been championing for Tony Alford to get a raise, and I'm going to say it again on here. Pay that man. Tony Alford has assembled one of the best running back rooms in the country, 1 through 5. We've only seen Chip Trainum and Travion Henderson, but they have both been balling out. Mayan Williams, a great change of pace back that we've seen get those tough hard yards and even fill in when Travion Henderson was hurt last year, to the point that people were questioning, is he the best back on the team? Dallin Hayden, sophomore, 300-yard games as a true freshman this year. Hasn't really seen the field. It looks like he might even redshirt, but again, another super talent to have back there. And then Evan Pryor, the guy that battled with Donovan Edwards for the final running back spot in Ohio State's recruiting class during their senior years. Just an absolutely loaded room. So I have the Buckeyes at 1, and a lot of people don't love that take, but I think 1 through 5, Ohio State has the deepest room in the Big 10. And then from there, I'm going with Penn State because I think Katron Allen right now is the best back in the Big 10. He may not have the numbers, but I kept seeing the tweets all over the timeline last week. Good luck tackling Estime. I'm like, have you seen the clips of Katron Allen and Tommy Eichenberg meeting in the hole? Tommy Eichenberg just dissolved into a puddle after he ran into Katron Allen. He's one of the most explosive and physical backs that I've seen in the nation. And it's crazy because he doesn't get the hype because Nick Singleton was the #1 back in his class and came in the same class. And that two-headed monster, I'm willing to put it on record, is the best duo, which Michigan fans will not love because they think it's Blake and Donovan. But I think Katron and Nick Singleton complement each other so well. And then that leaves us with Michigan at 3. And I do want to give some credit to Michigan. I don't want to completely crap on them. I don't think this is negative towards Michigan to say that they're 3, because I think these running back rooms are just so talented. You saw Blake Corum add about 15 pounds in the offseason. A lot of people thought coming off of injury and then adding that weight that he wouldn't be as explosive. I've watched Michigan. I think Blake looks better than ever. I think he looks great. He looks just like himself. But the question there is Donovan Edwards. And during the offseason, I was saying I think Don might be the best running back in the Big 10. And like, he's just disappeared. And they're like, you know what, Don? Go play slot receiver and we'll use you on a jet sweep occasionally here or there. I think Donovan Edwards is having, up to last week, a disappointing season by some people's expectations just because of the way that he exploded against Ohio State last year. People thought that he would build off of that this year and have another crazy year and potentially even take snaps away from Blake Corum, but it looks like it's about to be the Blake Corum show again in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny because the way people were talking about Donovan Edwards, including myself, after last season was the same way people were talking about Travion Henderson after his freshman season. And I think that the same way Trey took a dip and people kind of got off the Trey, wagon for a little bit, I feel like we're seeing the same thing with Donovan Edwards. Donovan Edwards, to me, I thought was going to take a leap and challenge for not just best running back in the Big 10. I'll try to say he was going to be the best running back in the country. So I really don't know what's going on there. And it does feel like Blake Corum, who I was surprised opted to come back, is continuing to get better. I think that is important. But I think Trey is the single best back in the Big Ten at this point.
Give me your depth chart 1 through 3.
A depth chart of the running back Big Ten.
Of the running backs in the Big Ten, 1 through 3. You're starting a team tomorrow. Who you got?
Trey, Blake, Chip. I'm from Akron.
Despite thinking the Buckeyes have the best room 1 through 5.
Nicholas Singleton is my third. But
I'm going Katron, Nick, Blake.
Wow.
No Buckeyes.
See, I really do like Trey this year. I think Trey's shown me a lot more, and it feels like he's, kind of following his coaching points a little bit more, and he's so explosive. I think he's the best home run hitter out of the group, and I think as someone who's obsessed with the big plays. They say chicks love the long ball. The triple's the best play in all, most exciting play in all baseball. I think Trey's long runs kind of separate him for me, and I think the fact that this year he's been able to kind of take things and get positive yards and things aren't blocked great up front separates him from the others. So that's where I'm at with the running backs. I do want to say though, when we rank these 1 through 3, you gotta understand we're talking about the elite of the Big Ten. So even if you're third,
not even just the Big Ten, I think the Big Ten is home of the best running backs in the country right now.
Yeah, I agree. So even if we're saying they're the third out of the big 3, it still might end up being a top 5, top 6 room nationally, just because of how good the Big Ten is. And I think that's an important point with all of this. Want to hit the defense, not going to go position group by position group, but just overall, Ron, what defense have you been most impressed with? And what are your big 3 defensive rankings?
Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan. I think Ohio State has one of the best defenses in the country. Jim Knowles' play calling has leveled up this defense, and I don't think he's doing anything exotic or scheming teams up. I think he's actually dialed it back and been less aggressive, and I think that's helped Ohio State take a step forward. They replaced 3 undrafted players in their secondary with guys that we think will be drafted in Sonny Styles, David Igbinosun, and Jordan Hancock. So those additions in the secondary, or with all of the guys that were contributors last year returning, I think this makes for one of the best defenses in the country and the best defense in the Big Ten. I have Penn State at 2 just because their edges have been going absolutely crazy. Chop Robinson has been an absolute animal and looks like he's going to be a first-round pick this year. Their secondary is the best in the country, arguably.
Yeah,
up there.
Keelan King, Johnny Dixon are real good.
Keaton Ellis at safety. Yeah. So
They're
overall,
really
super deep defensive team. Some questions on the interior at linebacker and at defensive tackle, but overall, I think this team, with the pressure that they're able to create and how good their secondary is, I think they're going to turn teams over a lot this year. And I think Penn State is the second best defense in the Big Ten. And then I have, again, the Michigan at 3. I've watched their games. I mean, and they haven't given up a ton, but I still think they have some question marks on that defense, specifically at corner. I don't love the transfer from UMass. I think that he will be a mark. I don't know if Penn State would be able to exploit it, but I think that is going to be what Ohio State looks to exploit when they see Michigan this year.
Heard. No, I definitely, I definitely hear you on that. I do think Ohio State has the best defense in the Big Ten. I feel real comfortable saying that. I think, the defensive line has been really good, even when not generating sacks. I think that's something. I mean, they forced 19 pressures against Notre Dame, which is a high clip, and should have had a sack on the 1 play action pass, but the scorekeepers didn't score it that way. I would go Michigan 2 and then Penn State 3, but I think it's razor thin, honestly, between all 3 of them.
What do you like about Michigan's defense?
You said that Penn State probably has the best secondary. I think Michigan probably has the best corners in the Big Ten. Lil Mike Sanderstill, I think, is a baller and a gamer. And when Will Johnson is there, like I just saw what Marv was able to do to honestly, what I thought was a better Penn State secondary last year. And I also saw Marv struggle to get open a little bit against the Michigan secondary. And I do think Will Johnson is one of the ones. So again, razor thin margins. Chop Robinson, I think, is the X factor for Penn State. If he continues this pace, I think they could end up having the best defense. But I guess right now, because I trust Jesse Minter more than I trust Diaz, I think I'm going to lean with the Michigan defense. But I think Ohio State's better than both of them. So
before we get out of here, I got to get your opinion on this. I need you to rank the top 3 corners out of the big 3.
Out of the big 3, I got Denzel Burke 1.
Do you mean that, or are you just saying that because you're an Ohio State fan? Like, legitimately, if you're drafting an NFL franchise, are you taking Denzel Burke over Will Johnson? If Will Johnson's going to have one more year, they're not going to all be in the same class, but you're taking Denzel over everyone?
Stamped on wax, easy.
Stamped on wax.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, the one thing I wanted to see from Denzel Burke was, like, can you cover on all 3 phases and can you hit? He's doing everything right now, and he's being really ball disruptive to the point where people don't even want to challenge him. Like he's taking away a third of the field right now. No, I'm taking Denzel Burke.
1 catch last week. One catch on Denzel last week.
Yep, I think Denzel is not only the best out of the big 3, but I think he's probably a top 5 corner nationally. So I'm really high on Denzel Burke. So I'll go Burke 1, Will 2, and then Kalen King 3 probably.
I wasn't sure if you were going to go double Michigan corner there and
Lil Mike.
disrespect Kalen King before we get out of here.
Yeah, Lil Mike. All right, before we get out of here, is Ohio State a great team, and are they the best in the Big 10, Ron?
I think so. I think they have an elite championship level defense. And when people keep asking me why I think Ohio State is going to have the success I believe that they're going to have, I think it solely starts and ends with how talented this defense is.
Boom. Easy. I think they are the best team in the Big 10. I do think this is a long season and that you'll see a lot of growing pains from this team. But because of how suffocating the defense is, I think that the offense will figure it out. And then it becomes about winning the Big 10.
Before we get out of here, I want to ask you one more question. We have a poll that I just published, and I have to get your answer before we leave. Can the Big 10 get 2 teams in the playoffs? We just talked about the Big 3 and how razor thin the margins are between these 2 teams. With the landscape of college football right now and how many good teams there are right now, or maybe lack thereof great teams, do you think the Big 10 can sneak in 2 teams in this final 4-team format in the playoff?
I think they could, because I do see a world where the Pac-12 cannibalizes itself and the Pac-12 champion has 2 losses, and then I can see a world where the Big 12 champion has 2 losses. And if that is the case, then I do think a 1-loss Michigan or Ohio State has a shot to get in over a 2-loss champion from one of those conferences.
No Penn State?
No, I don't think Penn State has a pedigree to be a 1-loss non-champion to get in.
That stinks to hear. I'd love to see Penn State get in with 1 loss to the Buckeyes. I would love to see Michigan miss the playoffs in their year of having their best team. And I'd argue they've had better teams in the past 2 years, but they think this is their best shot yet. So we shall see.
We shall see. Ron, I got nothing else left, man. Appreciate you for hopping on. And, we had a blast. Thank you, BR.
Absolutely. Make sure you tap in on the Best Damn Media YouTube. We talk Buckeyes every single day. So if you like what you see, make sure you subscribe on YouTube at Best Damn Media. We appreciate you guys.
Yep.